During the speak now or forever hold your peace portion. What happened? Mum got married to my stepdad. Uncle objected. After the attention was focused on him, he just asked if they were still going fishing afterwards. To which my stepdad reached into his suit and pulled out his fishing hat. Very sweet and romantic. They loved to fish together. Rip though, remind me to upload the video. Wish I could find a cheap way to digitize the VHS to upload it online. Edit. Bought a VHS TV combo from Goodwill. Youtube link. I was working at a wedding when I was younger. I was running the bar at the reception, which was very close to the hall the weddings were at. We were told that the reception would begin around 4 PM. It was already about 3ish and I was packing fridges. The usual barman things. While one of the male guests was still sitting there drinking, I asked if he was not joining the reception. To which he replied something along the lines of, "When I have the courage." He downs his drink and leaves. 10 minutes later he's back, looking extremely disappointed. Guy orders a drink. And less than 30 seconds later another guy who's dressed extremely well, turned out to be the groom, walks in, punches him in the back of the head, and leaves. This dude just picked his drink up and sipped it further. I eventually found out that this dude had downed his drink, walked into the receptions down, admitted to sleeping with the wife on her hen night, and again the night before the wedding. He was never invited to the wedding. He just felt the groom needed to know. So he found out where the wedding was, suited up and dropped the info mid-ceremony. The groom deserved to know his bride-to-be was cheating on him, but it seems unnecessarily dramatic to tell him at the wedding of all times. Last chance, I guess. This was in the early 70s in semi-rural Washington state. My cousin was getting married, and my aunt and the mother of the groom did not get along well. During the ceremony, when the pastor got to the part about objecting, my aunt said something to my uncle and the groom's mom jumped up and grabbed my aunt and they started going at it. All the way out the door and into the parking area. They were separated, and everyone filed back into the barn, where the wedding continued. The best part though was when another one of my cousins simply walked into the woods after the wedding because that's where he lived. Story is great, but I'm upvoting that last sentence. My aunt was getting married to her second husband, and during the speak now or forever hold your peace bit, their baby started crying. The dude officiating it said if anyone older than 6 months has any objections, speak now or forever hold your peace. He got a laugh and the wedding carried on. They're still together 10 years later. So I guess whatever my cousin had to say was misinformed. A lot of these stories hinge on an unflappable officiant who makes a witty quip and keeps rolling. I hope people not yet married reading this thread take away the importance of hiring the right person to officiate. I bet the laugh in that room was solid. The best man at my stepsister's wedding did this. It happened at the rehearsal the night before. It was a very large wedding and the rehearsal was bigger than a lot of weddings. The minister was going over the vows quickly while giving instruction on what to do. When he said something about objections, the best man interrupted, saying he had to put a stop to this. He was in love with the bride and was sure she felt the same way. My sister and everyone else was horrified. It caused plenty of chaos and confusion. As far as I know, after that neither the bride nor groom ever spoke to him again. So worst man. To be fair, I didn't witness this, but it happened to my parents. My mom invited an ex she was still rather close with to her wedding and he stood up and yelled, "I object." Little did everyone at the wedding know, my dad had gotten rather close with him and paid him to stand up and object just for the shits and giggles, and he bursts out laughing. My mom didn't find it as funny and it really started their marriage off on the right foot. All fun and games until the bride responds by gasping, "Oh, insert ex's name. I never stopped loving you." It was a medieval themed wedding. The best man declared his love for the bride, challenged the groom to a fight for her love. They march outside, draw swords and go at it. Apparently they choreographed 2 nights a week for like 6 months, but it honestly looked like they were trying to kill each other. The groom wins and everything goes on like normal. 0 weird but cool. Edit corrected groomsman to groom. Thanks all. D. This is super cool. But to really fit the theme they should have had a third man do the challenge and the best man fight on the groom's behalf. The best man was originally essentially a bodyguard, both from other potential suitors and the bride's family, since weddings and kidnappings would often be the same thing. He was meant to be the best swordsman the groom knew and stood guard right up until the marriage was consummated. I attended a wedding as a guest of a family member, and when THR pastor said that, the doors busted open to the sanctuary and a man appeared and started to say "I do." But two huge ushers, one who was my date, quickly grabbed the guy before he could say anything but under the arms and literally lifted him up off the floor and carried him out. The wedding continued as normal. Turned out the guy was the ex of the bride. Strangest sight I ever saw. Sounds like they were forewarned that might happen. So I'm attending this ultra chill beach wedding in small town Canada. I don't know most anyone because it was my ex step-aunts. So my brother's family I never see. It was fun anyways. The bride flew in on a seaplane and all the chairs were set up on the sand. Anyways, the groom is from Trinidad and Tobago. So all his relatives traveled a long way and had cool accents. There was a party before. We were all a little bit tipsy. So as the ceremony progresses, everyone is watching, getting teary from the vows. Then the line comes, "Any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony? Speak now." Nobody expected this. The father of the groom gets up, flailing, and a collective gasp followed by silence overtakes this tiny venue. We're all waiting with bated breath, but he's just standing there with glassy eyes. Turns out he was baked. This 70+ man in a suit and dreads laughs and says, "No. I kid. I kid," and the whole spirit of the audience cheers up as he sits back down. I'll have what he's having. At my cousin's wedding, when the exchanging of vows took place, my aunt shouted, "Wasn't there supposed to be a part where you could object?" or something along those lines. "Aunt, I object." Minister. Overruled. Me and my best friend have a pact to be each other's best man. But now I wanna get ordained so I can set that up. One of my friends interrupted his cousin's wedding to come out of the closet. He couldn't understand why people were so pissed at him. Edit. This was the second time my friend had come out to his family. The first time was when he was a teenager, about 8 years earlier, and 90% of his family that was attending said wedding was already aware. There's a time and place, and that place is definitely not a wedding and certainly not during the ceremony. Unless he's the groom. When I was 13, we went to my second cousin's wedding. Everything is going great. They even got past the "speak now or forever hold your peace" part. They wrote their own vows, but before my second cousin's fiancé wife could even begin her vows, his son got up, announced to the entire room that she was cheating on his dad with her drug dealer and he couldn't let his dad marry her. My second cousin yelled at his son to either sit down or leave. The son left. My second cousin married her anyways. And 5 years and 1 baby later he finds out it was true and they separated, but were too tweaked out to be able to afford a divorce. Finally he got married a third time, but before he could get married, his third now ex-wife had to pay for their divorce. This wedding had no objections. They moved to Missouri, and this time, instead of separating or asking for a divorce, he decided he didn't want to be married anymore and just moved back to Cali to get back together with his second ex-wife. Yet family dinners are a little awkward. "How's the son doing?" "Oh, so now you need financial help from me because your drug dealer/wife ducked you over just like I kept telling you she would?" "Well, dad, maybe you should either sit down and shut up or just ducking leave." Edit. I am not OP. Check the usernames. I just said what I think I would like to imagine that I would have said in the heat of that moment that I was not actually part of or even aware of before reading the above comment. Groom's dad interrupted the wedding to ask the bride's father whether or not she was truly a virgin. Then he went on about how he didn't know anything of the wedding and blah blah blah. Truly weird and embarrassing. I was there with an ex-boyfriend. Edit. He is my ex-boyfriend. When the groom's father interrupted the wedding, the bride's father, officiating the wedding, did in fact say was confirmed. I have no clue how or what. They seemed to be super conservative and wore sleeved dresses, long hair, etc. and were Afro-American. They eventually showed the father-in-law out and continued with the ceremony, which was super awkward afterwards. It was literally as if I was on prank. Said ex seemed to find the ordeal entertaining because she was humiliated. This was his family, bride, and that sort of sealed the deal. Something was wrong with the guy. We broke up a week later. It is worse if father of the bride could actually answer that question accurately. Got booted out of my cousin's wedding reception with about 20 other people. My cousin had her wedding on a farm with a massive pig roast. From what I remember, there was a massive amount of people. Anyway, her father and my other older cousin never really got along. At one point during the reception, my older cousin had enough and absolutely lost it. He looked at a handful of us and asked if we had his back. Of course we all nodded, not really knowing what was about to happen. He disappeared and a few minutes later comes back with a 20-pound bag of pork meat from the leftover roast. He walks down to where my cousin's dad is. My aunt proceeds to yell, "Lonnie, no," and smacks him right in the side of the face with the bag of meat. An all-out family brawl ensued. The whole family hasn't been invited to a wedding ever since. At my own wedding, but not in the traditional way. We were getting married along a river at the end of summer and tons of wakeboarders and boats were out. I was a ball of nerves and the ceremony felt so serious. When all of a sudden some dude bro on a boat blasting music screamed, "Don't do it, bro," and sped off. It was actually hilarious and made the rest of the ceremony a lot more fun. My husband and I cracked up even though his brothers looked like they were about to jump in the river after the guy. On mobile, sorry for formatting issues. Witnessed this a few months ago. Random guest stood up and proceeded to basically declare his love for the bride and pour his heart out, saying that it should have been him up on the altar that day. Whole room went dead silent. Bride went red with embarrassment and groom went red with anger. Best man promptly called for DJ MC to start playing music. All this was in front of the random person's wife. Didn't go down too well. I once went to a wedding where both families were Irish. GF knew them but I didn't. At the ceremony, the groom's ex-wife started shouting shit and was gently directed outside. I couldn't hear what was said. The reception was amazing, nice venue and all. But a bunch of guests had brought their own instruments and just started jamming what I can only describe as a genuine Irish jig. This went on for hours and remains a lasting memory of oral beauty. But I digress. There was a lot of booze. There was no responsible serving of alcohol and I'm certain it was by design. At some point I used the men's room and was curious if I'd just seen the groom in a stall, door open, with someone who was not the bride. I didn't know these people and it might have just been someone else. So said nothing. Some time later and the GF states, "Seriously, we should get going now." Yeah, sure. We grab our shit and head downstairs. I see the suspicious fellow again in the stairwell going to absolute town on this same lady. GF grabs my arm tightly and keeps walking past. Mumbles a thank you for the invite. I just smile and follow cause it's all weird. Yep. That was the groom. Octopusing his ex-wife. At his own wedding to another woman, the bride genuinely seemed a gem. The look that woman gave us as we passed was this smugly dominant "I always get what I want." Duck yeah, drunk as duck glare. Row. They had some reasonable bubbly in a tub for people to take home and who would know or care if we hawked a few extras. I got it all explained to me after we were in a cab and well on our way home. I never got a follow up to that story. But 10/10 on the music. Would tag along to an Irish wedding again. Once the traditional music, that's what you referred to as a jig, still very popular in Ireland, starts playing, it will usually get a bit chaotic, I found. I was best man at a wedding and the groom's older sister decided to play a joke and stood up and said I object, then started giggling. Groom's mother stood up, slapped her, told her it was not an appropriate joke and told her to go home. This mother still refuses to talk to her daughter 4 years later. Edit. Row. Went to bed and woke up to all the comments. But for those of you asking, it was not the first time this daughter in particular had done something to piss this mom off. And this was the first time I had ever seen this mom hit any of her kids. I have known the family 15 years. I also found out later that the mom had spent over $50,000 on this wedding. I'm guessing that mother-daughter relationship wasn't exactly rock solid to start with. I saw it nearly happen at my uncle's wedding. A friend of theirs got too drunk. And when Say said speak now, he smiled. Started to stand up. My mother grabbed him by his hair and sat him back down by force. Edit. Clarification and context. It was my mother, the groom's sister. The drunk was a close friend of both the bride and groom, so he was seated up front. He's a nice dude but sometimes a bit of a dumbass. It was a small non-traditional wedding. They were wed in the botanical gardens by a justice of the peace. The reception was held in the same place. When you entered the area for the wedding reception, there was an open bar, so some people helped themselves before the ceremony started. And one overindulged a bit. Friend. This is my moment. Mother. No. It's definitely not. Went to a co-worker's wedding and the maid of honor objected and admitted to being the other woman and that the groom had been cheating with her for months. The bride left in tears and the groom immediately tried to get with the mob. But she told him she wasn't gonna hurt the bride further and that he needs to duck off. The bride is doing much better and is now a manager here. And I haven't heard from the groom in over a year. The mom and bride are on speaking terms. But I don't think their relationship is gonna ever be what it used to be. I don't know what's shittier. Sleeping with her friend's fiancé or waiting until the middle of a, presumably expensive, wedding to tell her, and, presumably, in front of a crowd of friends and family. Exactly. Like, I'm glad she didn't let the marriage happen because he is a cheater. But could she really not tell her friend before the wedding? It was at my wedding that we had at my grandmother's house, who lives out in the country next to a cattle farm. The cows didn't make a peep till that moment and one finally went moo. We all laughed and continued, but it was a funny moment about my wedding. Edit. Just got her at the normal part about being my highest post. And best, it's about a cow going moo. I had cows mooing at my wedding too. Except it was constantly. Through the whole ceremony. Don't talk about your mother-in-law like that. I was at an Orthodox Jewish wedding with a chuppah ceremony where they read a contract and recite 7 blessings. The groom's dad pinched his son's derriere at a most solemn moment. Caused him to loudly shriek into the silent audience of 400. Bride saw and snorted loudly. They also publicly kissed after the ceremony. Which was a huge scandal. Edit. Bride and groom kissed. Populace could speak of nothing else for months. Edit 2. No. It's not against Jewish law. It's the community's sensibilities, they just do not do PDA. Edit 3. It wasn't an objection. But it sure sounded like one during the reading of the contract. Wait. Which people kissed? Antecedents unclear. The rabbi and the groom's father kissed right in front of the chuppah in a passionate act of love. I don't understand that. If someone objected and get thrown out during the ceremony anyway, then why would they open the chance for them to object in the first place? Can't they just cut off that line and let the bride and groom kiss in peace? Despite the stories, the point of the objection is for reasonable and significant objections to the bonds of matrimony, like an incomplete non-present divorce, one of the participants having a separate family, etc. It is supposed to be much more clerical and legal than social in nature. It's just that in the modern day, it's a lot less likely to have issues of this manner. So on the occasions where it's invoked, it's far more likely to be regarding infidelity or simply someone getting too sauced to realize nothing good will come of their last-minute plea for reconciliation. It's not a legal requirement either. I don't think. I'm pretty sure that anybody who wants to can cut it from their particular service. Not speak now part. But well, you'll see. Friend of mine was getting married in the park under the trees because both of them were nature people, and groom had a dog that went everywhere with him that wasn't allowed in any church because dog, despite being well trained and quiet. There were some rows of chairs with lots of people filling them, including groom's mother who was sitting with his dog. Bride and groom were at the front with the officiant. Officiant begins. Officiant comes to the part where he says, "Do you take groom's dog?" Shadow began to howl aloud. Long, mournful howl. Everyone laughed. Officiant started the question again. Loud, long, mournful howl again. Everyone laughed. Groom told Shadow to come to the front. Shadow ran up, stood directly in between the bride and groom, and the officiant started again. Not a peep from Shadow. Her vows. His vows. Officiant looked at Shadow and asked, "Shadow, do you take bride and groom to be your lawfully wedded parents?" Shadow barked one single bark. Officiant concluded the ceremony. Everyone cheered and clapped. And Shadow barked 3 times. The only times that he made any sounds. Not kidding. Beautiful dog too. All this was so sweet. A wedding I was at. One guy got up and pledged his undying love for the bride. Followed by 4 or 5 others objecting for various reasons, including one guy's love for the groom. By the 2nd or 3rd objection, though, it was clear that the whole thing was a clever ruse. I found out later that it was all set up by the bride as a prank on the unsuspecting groom and family and friends. It was pretty hilarious. Should have had the guys fight over it for extra comedic effect. But yeah. 3 including the gay guy is enough. Comedy comes in 3s. Only once, but it was non-romantic. The father of the bride had been pretty absentee after her parents' divorce. He had remarried and gotten into the Christian Science religion, and they were both pretty terrible. The new wife was not invited to my friend's wedding, but the father came and it seemed like he was there to be supportive. He stood up during vows and proclaimed my friend was a beach just like her mother and the groom should get out while he can because my friend was a soul-leeching succubus. Not the worst wedding I ever went to. What do you mean not the worst? Story time. I'm 30 and I'm starting to think I may be bad luck because I've been to a few disasters when most people can't name one. The highlights would be the ceremony being interrupted because the woman the groom was seeing on the side appeared with their baby. Yes, their secret love baby, and the groom explaining that polygamy is natural and we should be more open-minded. The bride, my former college roommate, insisting on driving herself to the wedding and getting a DUI en route. Then making an ill attempt at seducing the officer to get out of it. Being turned down and subsequently slapping the officer and getting arrested for assault. Waiting for a co-worker on one of those Sunset cruises, engine fails and starts a small fire and everyone had to evacuate the boat. +1 to a wedding the couple were completely scammed by their wedding planner. Venue wasn't actually booked. No caterer. No cake. No DJ, no nothing. She scammed them out of thousands. 250 guests milling about in a town center parking lot. They of course reported her, but I don't think they were ever able to recover much of their money. Edit. A lot of people have asked how I've been to this many crazy weddings. Honestly, between college and working many different levels of jobs throughout my 20s, I just happened to be invited to a lot of weddings. In general, it seems like the stress of weddings in general tend to bring out something unique. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.